Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, absurdism in the extreme. It's all available here in the Tales from the Omni Vault book series. Check the description for Amazon links so you can get your copies and start reading today. Thank you all, and now, on to the video. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer. And I feel like I've got to talk about this because a few years ago, this was something I wanted to see happen, and now that it's happening, I certainly do have some thoughts. What I'm referring to is that a few years ago, I made a video about other DC characters I wanted to see get worked into what was then the DC Extended Universe, the one that ran from Man of Steel to Aquaman and the Lost Box Office Returns. And among those different characters were the Creature Commandos, a group of monster characters that, well, there have been many different iterations throughout the years. It started off kind of like it was classic monsters, but working for the army, and over time it's gone through different iterations as like a variation of Suicide Squad, and sometimes it's more Hellboy influenced. It tends to vary. But it was something I thought could potentially work on the big screen. And I especially wanted to see it because the last time we'd seen the Creature Commandos enter the mainstream was when DC was doing those weird animated shorts on Cartoon Network that eventually spawned Teen Titans Go, and they were just treated like an insult in that one. So I wanted to see them get their dues. Of course, that was back when we didn't know that the DCEU was going to be ended and rebooted. But now James Gunn is bringing the DC Universe into a new era. We don't know how it's going to go yet, but the first official entry in it is going to be an animated series based on Creature Commandos. And definitely not an animated series for kids, I can tell you that much. So the first trailer has dropped, and I will say this to start. It looks way better than Suicide Squad Isekai. I did actually try watching that. I saw the first 3 episodes, first 2 in Japanese and the third in English. And I'm not feeling it. There are many things that just don't make sense or just don't work. First of all, it kind of strains credibility when you have characters going into this other world and they're amazed by all the magic and strange creatures when they're coming from the DC universe. I mean, this should just be another standard Tuesday for all of them. It just kind of doesn't ring as true, if you will. The whole point of an isekai is that characters from the normal world get transported to an unusual, fantastical world. Transporting characters from one fantastical world to another isn't gonna work as well because, you know, what's changed really? But also it's just the characters themselves feel kind of flat. And this is particularly a problem for Harley and the Joker. Now, I haven't seen that much of the Joker based on the few episodes that I did watch because he's only in the very beginning of the first episode. But I mean, you don't need that much time to get an impression of any new iteration of the Joker. And this particular Joker, as well as Harley, they don't feel like those characters. They are, you know, generically unhinged in their own way, but they're not clowns the way that Joker and Harley are supposed to be. So, yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, and we're only just beginning the video, but I'm not too fond of Suicide Squad Isekai. Creature Commandos looks like it's going to be much better. Although it also looks like it's going to be a James Gunn project. The trailer is definitely emphasizing the crass, bizarre humor and the over-the-top nature of it all, which is what people generally think of when they think of James Gunn superhero movies. And obviously that would be the foot you want to lead with for something like this. It seems like this is going to be sort of the safe point for James Gunn to enter into the DC universe, because he's basically doing what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, taking a group of characters that are relatively obscure but also technically part of that universe and doing some sort of crazy, irreverent romp with them. Which, you know, it could work. It doesn't look like it's going to be completely comedic, though I'll get to that in a moment. But since they are emphasizing it, I am expecting it to be a significant part of the story. And also from the looks of it, it's going to be based on more recent editions of the Creature Commandos. Like I said, if you read the earliest version of Creature Commandos, which I have, you've got a Frankenstein monster, though not actually Frankenstein's monster, a vampire, a werewolf, and eventually a Gorgon, if you can believe it. And they're tasked with fighting the Axis in World War II. The whole thing is meant to be actually an allegory for the Vietnam War, which I'm not sure completely lands the way it was intended, but whatever. It's an interesting little time capsule. More recent versions have added different varieties of monsters, brought in other villains that might function as monsters, moved the actual Frankenstein monster to the forefront and just called him Frankenstein. And, you know, all sorts of different iterations. This is going to be the most recent one. Looks like it's got a pretty interesting lineup. And, of course, I'm going to be sitting here watching it and thinking, if my book Occult Mafia takes off after this series airs, everyone's going to think I stole from it. Yeah, but, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. What I really want to address, though, is the fact that, like I said, it does seem that this particular series, while definitely going to be irreverent in many ways, does look like it has hints of drama. They don't fully emphasize it here, of course, but you do see certain scenes that look like they would be more in the vein of something serious is going on. And I actually think that's important. And in fact, it's something that a lot of people seem to have forgotten. When James Gunn was announced as being the new mastermind of the DC universe, on film at least, it was met with a lot of skepticism that kind of surprised me. Because people were largely going, well, wait a minute, James Gunn is entirely the wrong person to do DC characters. DC is like the most traditional form of superheroes you can think of. How are we supposed to apply a bunch of crass humor and potty mouth language and stuff to somebody like Superman? That doesn't make sense. And what really got me about these critiques is that it seemed like everybody had developed amnesia. Like, yes, those elements are definitely part of James Gunn's repertoire when he's adapting superhero stuff. He did it with all three Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and he did it with The Suicide Squad, a movie that I feel very weird pronouncing because you have to emphasize the at the beginning to separate it from the original Suicide Squad. But that's beside the point. He did that both times, but both times he also had loads of heart. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 might be my go-to example for a lot of what I'm about to say, because it might be my favorite MCU movie. In fact, I'm pretty sure it is. And yeah, there's the quippy banter, the crass language and what have you, but there's also real heart there. Like, in any other MCU movie, Ant-Man, Avengers Endgame, Thor Love and Thunder, quippy lines are used to diffuse drama. Like, something serious is happening. Two characters are having a real heart-to-heart. The situation is dire. And then it's like somebody in the Disney executive screening room said, oh no, the children might get sad if this lasts too long. Quick, have a character say something funny so that they don't feel bad emotions. And then, of course, a joke is inserted, everybody in the theater laughs, the dramatic moment is dead. In Guardians, though, I mean, yes, there is humor, but it's not used that same way. With Rocket Raccoon in particular, yeah, he's sarcastic a lot of the time. Yeah, he says sarcastic things and quippy things to try and diffuse dramatic moments. But that is very deliberate on his part. You realize as you're watching the movies, whether it's an individual one or you're watching the whole trilogy in a row, or every appearance of his in a row, you realize he's not trying to diffuse the tension for the audience's sake. He's doing it for his own sake. He's using it to build up a wall around him because he's got this fear about being emotionally vulnerable. He doesn't want to open up, so he deflects. But he can only do that for so long before people finally break through and actually get to him. Or what about Drax? Everybody thinks, haha, Dave Bautista say funny line because Drax takes everything literally, he's so funny, ha ha ha. And, I mean, yeah, if you only watch the trailers or like random funny clips taken out of context, you might get that impression of him and think that's all there is to Drax. But then you got scenes like that one-on-one he has with Mantis while they're on Ego's planet. And the subject of his daughter who was killed by Thanos comes up. And he just gets this distant, stoic look on his face. And when Mantis, being an empath, touches him to sense what his emotions are, she breaks down in tears while he just remains silent. And she's feeling outwardly what he's feeling inwardly. That is a very powerful moment. And yeah, it is followed up by a joke, but it's not a joke that happens right away. James Gunn allows you to actually feel the sadness of what happens. And don't even get me started on that final scene, not the post-credits or mid-credits stuff. I mean, right before the credits begin, where you have the funeral for Yondu. I mean, my word, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is one of the only superhero movies ever made that actually leaves me feeling misty-eyed at the end. I don't generally cry at movies, even when they are very emotional. It's not like I'm immune to them or anything, but I can generally just go, oh, that's sad, and not necessarily be moved to tears by it. Guardians 2 gets me every single time. It hasn't lost its effect, no matter how many times I've watched it. And that's despite the fact that all of the vulgarity and stuff before it was implemented. But it was implemented with purpose, again. And at the end of that movie, it all culminates. It's all come together. That's what James Gunn is really good at. And yes, even in The Suicide Squad, while it is certainly more ramped up because he was allowed to make an R-rated movie, you still have those heartfelt messages, like how even something as lowly and hated as a rat can still serve a purpose. That's a message that a lot of people, I think, really need to hear. And it's incorporated amongst all this stuff about villains just not giving a flip. That is one of the amazing things James Gunn can do. He can be crass, he can be irreverent, but he can also pull at your heartstrings. Everybody knows that until they don't, which is weird to me. Like, they suddenly are like, oh, well, James Gunn certainly made me feel emotions with this movie, but wait a minute, he's making a Superman movie? Oh, he is entirely the wrong man for the job. We don't even know what he's going to do. Like I said, Creature Commandos does look like it's in his comfort zone, certainly. But I do see little hints throughout that trailer that make me think there's going to be something emotional there. Something is going to happen that's going to make us at least feel sympathy for what these characters are going through. At least that's what I'm hoping is going to happen. But like I keep saying, this is clearly not an example of James Gunn stretching himself. Creature Commandos looks very much like it's in that same vein as Guardians and The. So he's gonna be doing what we all know him for. Creature Commandos alone, I don't think is going to be a proper way to determine if the new DC Universe movies are off to a good start or a bad start, because we're starting in a familiar place. The real test, I think, is going to be Superman Legacy, because James Gunn's doing that one as well, and he's not going to be able to do that same level of stuff that he can do with more obscure characters. Because it's Superman. Superman is the superhero. There I go emphasizing the again. But Superman, you can't have him be crass. You can't have him be irreverent. You can have him be jovial, sure. He is a light-hearted character in a lot of ways. He can crack jokes, certainly better than Batman can. But you can't necessarily do him the same way you do Rocket Raccoon or Star-Lord or Drax. You have to do him a very particular way. So that, I think, is going to be the real test. And ultimately, we've only seen a couple promotional stills and behind-the-scenes images. In case you're wondering, yes, I have seen what the costumes for the other heroes look like. Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, and Green Lantern Guy Gardner. Not a fan. I'm not going to lie to you guys. They look terrible. Well, scratch that. Mr. Terrific's costume looks good because that's his actual costume from the comics. And apparently he's supposed to be the team leader, so he sets the standard for the uniforms that the other characters wear, but it doesn't look good on them. It's not just that I want to see their original costumes, it's also that they just don't look good on other characters. I've never seen a Green Lantern suit with less green on it. And it'd be one thing if it was Alan Scott, but this is not Alan Scott we're talking about, it's Guy Gardner. Even then, I don't think it would have looked good on Scott either. My hope, and maybe this is a long shot, but my hope is that this is some sort of long game he's playing with the movie where it's like the characters are supposed to be this team, but they're so strict in trying to be coordinated that they're not doing such a good job, and part of Superman's role is going to be telling them, you gotta loosen up a little. You're still a team, you should still work together, but you gotta embrace what makes you individuals as well, and that's when you'll really shine. And the finale will begin with that money shot of all the characters in their classic costumes charging into battle against whatever the big enemy is, that purple eye thing in the sky maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's a pipe dream, but I can still hope. Still, Superman Legacy, we haven't really seen anything in terms of a trailer yet. So who knows how that's going to go. As for Creature Commandos, I'm definitely curious. You know me, I'm a monster guy. I do want to see this play out. Hopefully it's good. Only time will tell, though. Let's just say I am still looking forward to it. And when it debuts, I'll share my thoughts then. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off.